Hi. I hope that you'll find this to be the most important video on the Israel-Hamas conflict that you've ever seen. And there's no clickbait here. I'm going to go through two attitudes. I guess one is an attitude of Americans or a quality of Americans. The other one is a psychological mechanism that we all use and how this overlays or colors the way that we interpret what we see going on in that conflict. So I'm going to first tell you what those two items are, and then I'm going to quickly tell you the different topics we're going to cover, and then I'm going to take those two qualities, I'm going to apply them to all the different aspects of this conflict to help people to much better understand what's really going on. The two qualities are tolerance and projection. Tolerance. It is a quality of Americans that we are fundamentally not bigoted people, and we are fundamentally tolerant of all views, all viewpoints. And some people can say things no matter how intelligent or how right or how wrong or how dumb or how strange they are. Everybody gets a chance to say it. And as Americans, we respect that. And that's certainly part of one of the reasons why America is the dominant superpower in the world. When America has all the problems that we have, you find that all around the world, people want to invest in America. Because if we're a bad party, we're the best of all the bad parties. And our system of government, the rule of law, and the tolerance of the American people for all peoples is something that allows us as a society to promote and achieve and innovate with anybody in society participating because we're tolerant. Is there some level at which we're not tolerant? And the answer is yes. You may not realize it, but clearly yes. For example, are we tolerant of murderers? No. How about people who say raping is good? You can say, who is that? Rapists. Are we tolerant of that? Do we put that on, do media put on people who want to espouse the good qualities of rape? Absolutely not. So our tolerance goes to a certain point, and then we have values that kick in. And the trouble is, our tolerance is getting manipulated by those who want to try to form what we're thinking. We're going to see that soon. The second aspect is projection. It's a natural part of the human mind psychology that what you know, you'll tend to project onto others. Now, originally, Sigmund Freud, the father of psychiatry, talked about the defense mechanism of projection, just as talks a little obtusely, but a male would have certain intimate thoughts that were completely taboo, completely unallowed, forbidden from a societal or religious perspective. So he would have to suppress those thoughts or repress those thoughts in his mind. And then he would think that other people want to do that with him because he's projecting the conflict in the back of his mind onto others. More generally speaking, we do this all the time. We project what we think is right onto others. Now I'm going to take these two principles, I'm going to apply them to the following topics. One is innocent Palestinian civilians. You hear in the press so many times, innocent civilians, poor innocent civilians. So let me ask you, are civilians always innocent? I'll take in America. As far as I know, vast majority of people in America are civilians, not military, and yet some of them commit murder. Those are not innocent civilians. Some commit many other crimes. Those are not innocent civilians. So innocent of what? And what have they done, or what do they believe, or what do they promote that makes them innocent or maybe not innocent? We're going to look at that in detail. The second is occupation. Many of the pro-Palestinian types will say, Israel's been occupying the Palestinians. What could they do? They have no choice. Is that true? I know for a fact, hopefully you know also, that in 2005, Israel completely withdrew from Gaza. Completely withdrew. The Gazans were free. The Palestinians in Gaza were free to develop their own constitution that reflects who and what they are, to elect their representatives in a free election that was monitored by the international community. And what did they choose? But in terms of occupation, Israel did not occupy Gaza, and did not occupy Gaza from 2005 until 2023, after October 7th, when Israel was invaded by the Palestinians in Gaza. So we're going to look at the occupation. And then some people will say, well, Israel was not occupying inside Gaza, but Gaza was an open-air prison. Well, an open-air prison where, first of all, Israel does not have the total border with Gaza. Egypt does also. And in prisons, you don't get to drive your cars wherever you want, cell phones, do business, commerce, travel. So we're going to talk about it being an open-air prison. You hear free, free Palestine, free, free Palestine. Okay, well, in 2005, when Israel withdrew from Gaza, what did the free Palestinians choose? We're going to look at that. We'll see what the President of the United States thought about what a free Palestine would choose. We're going to talk about proportionate response. You hear people say, well, Israel's response is not proportionate. They're using a false understanding. Proportionate response is not the two words as you think they mean. It's a proper term. It's a proper term under international law. Going to see from the International Red Cross what proportionate response means, the definition, and it's nothing like what Piers Morgan was saying over and over and over again. It's not a proportionate response, not a proportionate response. Either he just wants to not tell the truth and get clicks, or maybe he's not so intelligent, didn't look it up, what proportionate response means. It's a definition. Then we're going to look at Jews for Palestine. But more than that, we're going to look at Jews who seem to not support Israel. We'll look at Senator Chuck Schumer. We'll look at George Soros. What I'm going to tell you, I'm going to have to get a little bit into the religion. I apologize for that. But I have to teach you a little bit of the religion because in my experience, I found that so many non-Jews that I've interacted with, who they have not a touch of prejudice against Jews. They want to be helpful, friendly, but they really have no concept what Judaism is. And even, I hate to say it, but most non-religious Jews also have no concept as to what Judaism is. So we're going to talk about what Judaism is and how we explain it. But let's just say Chuck Schumer, George Soros, and others like them, they are, if they were born to Jewish mothers, they are 100% Jewish. And I would say that they're part of the total Jewish army. And in the Jewish army, you have your generals and you have your sergeants and your privates, your colonels, lieutenants. What position do they have? They're the traitors. But we'll talk about that. Then lastly, we'll talk about solutions. There is a clear solution to the Israel-Palestinian conflict. And it's very clear. And don't doubt the ability of government or governments to keep doing the wrong thing over and over and over again. Not necessarily because they think it'll get better or it'll actually work the next time, but because they just don't think creatively. They don't want to deal with reality. They just want to sit in their little boxes and just keep going, have their jobs, and not really solve anything. So we're going to look at what the solutions are, and it's pretty clear. Just briefly, sorry, my name is Rich Roberts. I'm a medical doctor and a doctor of biophysics. I educated at Penn, did a medical internship at Harvard, at the Brigham and Women's Hospital of Harvard Medical School. For 24 years, I was the president and CEO of URL Pharma, pharmaceutical company. Glad to be here with you. So let's first look at the two qualities. The first one is tolerance. Americans are, like I said, very, very tolerant. But even by law, there's certain opinions, if forwarded, are not tolerated. One, for example, is subversion. You're not allowed to advocate for the overthrow of the United States government. As much as you want to be a fine person and you want to be tolerant and forgiving and understanding of other people, there does come some point where you have to say, we have a country, we have values. We're not just amorphous nothingness. Matter of fact, the United States has been one of the greatest forces of good, maybe the greatest in the history of the world. And we've changed the world so positively in so many ways. So there is, as much as we're tolerant, there is some point at which people are expressing views that are subversive to the government, and they're not allowed to do that. People are allowed to express their anger or dislike of somebody, but they're not allowed to advocate for taking violent actions against them. Well, if you look at the protests that have gone on by the pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas types, you don't have to take my word for it. Hopefully you've seen it. They're advocating the destruction of Israel from the river to the sea. That means from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. What's in between is Israel. They want to destroy every Jew, and we're going to see that momentarily. The second quality, which I spoke about, is projection. As Americans, we believe that people would like to be free. People would like to live their lives without the fear of violence. People would like to live their lives without hate. People seek economic advancement. And we believe that because that's who we are as a people. Are you sure that's what other people are like? Are you sure that that applies to everybody? Well, let me give you a great example of this projection where the President of the United States says what he believes Palestinian people are going to want and are going to do.
Democracies in the Middle East will not look like our own because they will reflect the traditions of their own citizens. Yet liberty is the future of every nation in the Middle East because liberty is the right and hope of all humanity.
So President Bush says that liberty is the right and the hope of all humanity. So in 2005, Israel withdrew from Gaza, and in 2006, the Gazans, the Palestinians in Gaza, were able to go to the polls and elect their representatives, their leader, who's going to lead their government, as President Bush says, to express their right and hope of all humanity to have liberty.
The Palestinian people have voted in elections, and now the leaders of Hamas must recognize Israel, disarm, reject terrorism, and work for lasting peace.
Now, I was a supporter of President Bush, not necessarily every single thing. Here's some pictures of me with President Bush. I was a big supporter of his, but boy, did he get this one wrong. So President Bush says that Hamas needs to recognize Israel and choose to live in peace. So let's look at who Hamas is. Let's look at their covenant, and we can look at the United States Constitution to understand who these people are that were freely elected by the Palestinian people. Now, Hamas received more votes than any other party. Second to Hamas was Fatah, also which runs the Palestinian Authority, run by Mahmoud Abbas. You'll find there's actually not much difference, only the level of cooperation between Israel and them, meaning Hamas will not cooperate with Israel at all, Palestinian Authority to some degree, as long as they continue to get money and line their pockets in corruption. But fundamentally, they believe in the same thing regarding Israel and regarding Jews. So let's look at the covenant of the Islamic resistance movement. It's Hamas's constitution. You can get this in the Yale Law School Press online. Just start out. It starts out, number 1. In the name of the most merciful Allah, Israel will exist and continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it. So contrast that with the United States Declaration of Independence, written by Thomas Jefferson, where he says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." So we as Americans believe that people would choose that. The founders of our country chose that. But that's not what the Palestinian people elected. They elected Hamas and allowed Hamas then to take over by pushing out Fatah that came in second place. Israel will exist and continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it. As Americans, we think the people, we project on the people, they're going to want life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But some people are motivated by the desire to destroy another country that defines who they are. This is what Palestinians voted for. This is who they are. Continuing in the very first section, the preamble to the Hamas or Palestinian Constitution, this is further what it says. It says, "Our struggle against the Jews is very real and very serious." And in Article 7, it says, "The day of judgment will not come about until Muslims fight the Jews, killing the Jews. The Jews will hide behind stones and trees. The stones and trees will say, 'O Muslims, O Abdullah, there is a Jew behind me. Come and kill him.'" Now, I want to explain something here. As Americans, we've become much more sensitized, or very sensitized, to the prejudice, the racism against black people. And we reject that. But racism against Jews is something that, as a society, we're not really so sensitized to. Right after World War II, the atrocities that were committed in the Holocaust that sensitized the public, and now there's been a loss of that sensitivity. So let me take that Palestinian covenant again, that Hamas covenant again, and let's substitute the word Jewish person for black or black person, and let's see how we feel about that. "The day of judgment will not come until Muslims fight the blacks, killing the black people, when the blacks will hide behind stones and trees. The stones and trees will say, 'O Muslims, O Abdullah, there is a black person behind me. Come and kill him.'" I would think that sounds like the Ku Klux Klan, or that sounds like the Nazis. But when Americans in our Declaration of Independence talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, where we don't advocate or discuss killing other people, killing Jews is a fundamental principle of the Palestinian people. We'll see. It's not all Palestinians, by the way. These are the Palestinians in Gaza, the ones who voted for Hamas. But there are 2 million Palestinians, or Arabs will say, that live in Israel. And most of them, there have been many, many polls, they don't want to destroy Israel. They're actually loyal to the state. They understand what it is to live under Arab rule. So we as Americans believe that we should cherish life and we should love life. Well, Article 8 of the Hamas covenant states, "Jihad is its path, and death for the sake of Allah is a lofty loftiest of all wishes. So we wish, as Americans, for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We wish for justice. As a matter of fact, I'll read here from our Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Compare that to jihad is the path, and death for the sake of Allah is the loftiest of its wishes. Do you see how we as Americans can't comprehend this? Our natural course is to believe that others are going to want life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness also. You hear people say, well, just get them economically advantaged. Because we believe as Americans, if we didn't have economic opportunity, we would want to have that. But that's not their goal. We believe liberty is critical. Maybe that's our primary value. They don't believe it's their primary value. Their primary value is to die in the effort to kill Jews and destroy Israel. It's not like they're oppressed. Israel withdrew 2005. Billions and billions of dollars of foreign aid poured into there. The Palestinian people elected Hamas. And what did Hamas do with the billions that poured in? Poured an immense amount of that money, number one, into building terror tunnels, building up their military, building tens of thousands of rockets, and also billions of dollars went into the pockets of the leaders of Hamas. Don't take my word for it. You should already know this. That's why they're living in Qatar in supreme wealth. They're billionaires where their people starve. That's why Hamas, the fighters are in the tunnels, leaving the civilians up above ground to get killed as Israel tries to defend itself. They are not a people that believes in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Their pursuit is Islamic domination of the world. And their first start of that is to destroy Israel and to kill the Jews. And they say it in their covenant. We find it hard to believe, but that's what they voted for. So let's accept that. So when we say innocent Palestinian civilians, innocent civilians, well, how many are really innocent? There's been many, many polls conducted by the Palestinian people. In terms of looking at which ones believed in or did not believe in October 7th, where 1,000 Hamas soldiers and 2,000 civilians rushed through 60 separate breaks they made in the fence separating Israel from Palestinian areas from Gaza, and they raped whoever they could rape. They cut people's heads off. They burned families alive. They killed babies. They killed anyone they get their hands on. 1,200 people they killed that day, and they took 250 people as hostages. Imagine you're living in your home, you're sleeping, and at 6 in the morning, all of a sudden they storm in, they start taking you and your family hostage. That's who they are, and that's who they voted for. So let's go to Article 13 of the Hamas Covenant. It says, initiatives and so-called peaceful solutions and international conferences are in contradiction to the principles of the Islamic resistance movement. It goes on, I'll skip a little just to get to the bottom line. This is Hamas speaking. This is who the Palestinians in Gaza voted for. And by the way, in the West Bank, which we call Judah and Samaria, the Palestinian Authority was elected to a 4-year term. They were in their 19th year of the 4-year term. In most Islamic countries, if there is a free vote, it's one person, one vote, one time, and there's never a vote again. So in the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority has not had another election, even though their term ran out 15 years ago. Why? That's because polls show that in the West Bank, the vast majority of Palestinians would vote for Hamas also. The Palestinians, they subscribe to this going on. There is no solution for the Palestinian question except through jihad. The greatest goal of jihad is to die in serving Allah to kill Jews. Not my words, it's their words. Initiatives, proposals, and international conferences are all a waste of time and vain endeavors. This is who we're speaking about when we talk about the innocent Palestinian civilians. 85% of them, in poll after poll after poll, believe that what happened on October 7th was good, and they supported it. When the Palestinians raped and pillaged and murdered and burned and beheaded throughout Israel, throughout the communities near Gaza, the Palestinians were celebrating. They're celebrating the West Bank. They're celebrating in Gaza. They were thrilled about it. It challenges Americans to comprehend that people think this way, because we don't think this way. And that's projection. We're projecting onto them what we think are the values that everybody has. Those are our values. Those are Western values. They are the Judeo-Christian values, but they are not the values of what they call the Palestinian people. So let's continue on this first topic of innocent Palestinian civilians. Watch this video.
Phone calls. There's a Hamas terrorist who calls his parents, and they have a recording of it because it was on a phone. that I think was left there or belonged to one of the victims. And he says, Mom and Dad, you will be so proud of me. I'm a hero. I killed 10 Jews with my own hands. And his parents are cheering and saying that they wish they were with him.
So let's ask, who are the Palestinian people? Where obviously this son of this couple is so proud that he killed 10 Jews with his bare hands, and his parents back in Gaza are ecstatic. I mean, you're thrilled that your child helped people, did acts of kindness, was able to discover something, achieve something, get married, raise a family. They're thrilled at the ability to kill Jews, and the more Jews they kill, the better. So now, who are the Palestinian people? Well, they always like this. It's very interesting. I hope you know that there was never a country of Palestine. For about 400 years, the Turks, in what was called the Ottoman Empire, ruled that whole area, big swath of the Middle East, was part of the Ottoman Empire. The Arabs that lived in that area, there were Jews living there also in Israel, but the Arabs living there, they didn't think they were Palestinians. They were mostly Egyptians, some were Syrians. They didn't believe there was any country of Palestine. They didn't think there was any Palestine. They didn't think there was never a Palestinian president. The Jewish people have been in that land for 3,500 years. You don't have to believe in the Bible to know this, because if you go in the Bible and you see all the stories about the Jewish people in the land of Israel, including the West Bank and Gaza, Israel is gone, and you can see, we go to Israel to see enormous amounts of archaeological digs where they dig up whole cities and civilizations. They were Jewish, with Jewish coins, Hebrew written on them, Jewish mosaics on the walls, Jewish ritual baths. We as Jews have been there for 3,500 years. We never left in total. The people that did leave did not do so voluntarily. The Babylonians had conquered Israel, the nation of Israel, and took us off as slaves into Babylonia, which is now Iraq. And later the Romans conquered Israel and took many of the Jews out and dispersed us throughout Europe to help teach farming methods to people. And that's how I ended up in the United States, because our people were taken into Europe by the Romans, and over the generations, some migrated to the United States. But we've been there for 3,500 years and never stopped. Christianity started after Judaism was 1,500 years old. I hope you realize that. Jewish people as a nation, when we left Egypt as slaves, that was 1,500 years before Christianity started. At that point, there was no Islam. There were no Muslims. Did not exist. Muhammad had not been born yet. Muhammad was born about 600 years after that. So as I said, for most of 400 years, the Ottomans, that's the Turks, ruled the whole area, and the Arabs living there didn't think they were Palestinian at all. Then, after World War I, the Ottoman Empire had sided with the forces, Germany, Italy, against the West, so they lost their territory. And the British and French ruled that area. That was called the British Mandate after World War I. And England went and actually just drew up most of the countries there. They didn't exist before. They were just tribes. The Arab people in general are not loyal to their country. They're loyal to their family group. They might not all have the exact same last name, but it's a clan. So, and then finally, Britain decided to exit the area, and the United Nations decided to partition the area that we're talking about between Israel and the Arabs. And Israel accepted it in 1947, and the Arab nations, all of them, attacked Israel to destroy Israel. And that's when some of the Arabs that lived in Israel, about 700,000, fled out of Israel because they were told by the Arab armies, leave your homes, we'll come in and kill all the Jews, and then you'll come back. Well, unfortunately for them, it didn't work out that way. The Jews survived. It was a miraculous survival, a ragtag band of people without a sophisticated army, outnumbered, and the Jews won, and the state of Israel survived. And I said 700,000 Arabs had fled Israel because they were told to do so by their Arab armies, but about 800,000 Jews had to flee Arab countries and come to Israel. The difference was that Israel accepted in its Jewish brethren, and the Arabs didn't. The Arab countries put the Arabs who had fled from Israel into refugee camps. Now, who controlled Gaza after the war of Israel's independence? It was controlled by Egypt. It was Egypt that put those Arabs that had fled Israel into refugee camps and would not allow them to migrate into Egypt proper. And Jordan controlled the West Bank, and Jordan put them into refugee camps and would not allow them to go into Jordan. Although ironically, Jordan was created in the British Mandate as the Palestinian state, and it's where the Palestinians should go and should be. And they should change that name of Jordan to Palestine, if that's what they want to call it. Those Arabs didn't believe they were Palestinian. They were just Arabs of Egyptian origin, of Syrian origin, whatever it be. It was the Arab mentality or the Arab unified governments that decided to create what they wanted to call a Palestinian people. And under Yasser Arafat, they educated several generations in absolute hatred of Israel. So if you go to your religious institution, your church or whatever it would be, you'll hear your religious leader talk about peace, talk about kindness, but that's not what they talk about in the mosques in the Palestinian areas. People have been raised on a diet of hatred. And here's an example of what they've been raised with. So here's a Muslim who was raised in that radical Islamic belief system. And again, it's not all Muslims are like this. I would call these the Islamists or the radical Islamic extremists or the radical Islamic terrorists. Not all Muslims are like this. And as a matter of fact, we see with the Abraham Accords that there are Muslims that are becoming more worldly and more willing to accept and live with other people. But just look at this former Hamas supporter and radical Islamist tell you how he was raised.
I was radicalized from the age 6 onwards, and I was raised with this hate-filled ideology. I believed that non-Muslims are in a perpetual war against Muslims. It's just the standard extremist Islamist kind of ideology that I was just raised in.
So in July of 2023, the Palestinian Center for Public Opinion did a survey of 500 Palestinians in Gaza and 500 in the West Bank. And they found that 57% viewed Hamas positively and 3/4 of them support Palestinian Islamic Jihad. If you think that Hamas is radical, Hamas is willing to at least on occasion talk with Israel and maybe stop having violence for a while. But the Palestinian Islamic Jihad will have none of it. They just want to attack. And 3/4 of Palestinians in July 2023 support Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the most radical of the radicals. So when you go to October, it's not such a surprise that the 2,000 Palestinian civilians that went through the fence, the breaks in the fence, went there to brutalize and with no conscience, with an objective of maximum violence and maximum human degradation and maximum animalistic, even animals don't behave that way, the worst of animal behavior. That's what these 2,000 civilians went through, and that's what they perpetrated upon Israel. So here's an example of how the press tries to whitewash or cover up who and what the Palestinians really are. See this video.
And when it comes to the Palestinian people are asking themselves here, why is it that the entire Gaza region has to pay the price for the actions of the Hamas militants, so basically for the actions of a few.
So the Palestinians in Gaza and in the West Bank, they hate Jews and they hate Israel, and they identify in their minds as people who want to kill Jews and destroy Israel, but they don't like the consequences of their actions. In other words, they are so bloodthirsty that they unleashed the October 7th attacks. But now they don't like what Israel's done in defending itself. And I'm sorry, but in this world, actions have consequences. So here's a guy who appears in the press a lot. He tries to make like he's not a bigot against Jews, but he clearly is. So listen what he says about Israel's actions defending themselves.
It's genocide against Palestinians.
So he says that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinians. The Palestinian population since Israel's founding has increased from about 700,000 people to about 10 million, and half the Palestinian population is under the age of 18. That's not what genocide is. In genocide, the population goes down, not soaring up. Again, in our projection, what we think is someone who wants to commit genocide, the Palestinians who want to commit genocide against all Jews and Israel, who state that they want to do it, who have voted for the party that wants to do it, we can't imagine that they would say, oh, it's them who want to commit genocide against us. It's the Israelis who want to commit genocide against the Palestinians. We can't imagine how they would say that and not have some legitimacy to it. The opposite is the truth. It's under Israel, under Jewish rule, the Palestinians Palestinian population has increased tenfold. It's the Palestinians who want to commit genocide against Jews, and they state it in their covenant, and they've been firing missiles and committing suicide attacks and river to the sea. That's what it means. But we as Americans find it hard to believe that people would reverse the truth, exactly the opposite. But it's clearly what the Palestinians do and what the apologists for the Palestinians do. So I'll give you another example of projection. That's what you see here by the Palestinians. Because the Palestinians want to commit genocide against the Jews, they assume the Jews want to commit genocide against them. But it's not true. This is projection. Palestinians, their worldview is, Christians also, by the way, they see Christians as being crusaders. You may or may not know about the Crusades, which occurred about 1,000, or two of them about 1,000 years ago. And the Middle East had changed hands when the Christians ran crusades and took it over, and the Muslims took it back. But that's how the Palestinians view the Christians and the Jews, as people who want to destroy them. So look at this video of someone, a Muslim, who believed this and believed that the Jews want to kill him. And look at what he discovered.
For instance, once I went to a Jewish home. I was selling a computer to them. And the little toddler, they had a little kid, came up to me and suddenly just became attached to me. And the parent said, he wants to play with you. So I was really young. I sat down and started playing with his toy cars. And his parents were looking on what was happening and smiling. And I remember looking across at them and thinking, I hate them, but they don't hate me. In fact, they're trusting me with their child. And that changed a lot for me.
I'm afraid maybe this video is going too long at this point. We're going to take a break now, and I'll continue on with the innocent Palestinian civilians in the next episode. Thank you for watching. And please, by the way, please subscribe.